Welcome into the January 13th edition of the Lockdown Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. The Leafs winning streak against the Red Wings is snapped. They were going for 10 in a row. Didn't happen. Lost in regulation. Pretty crappy game from Toronto all around. We'll break it all down. We'll preview the game against the Boston Bruins tomorrow. That should be a big one. All that more coming up on the Lockdown Leafs podcast.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Lockdown Leafs podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Lockdown Leafs, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast, so be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. You can also now catch us up on video. Check us up on YouTube. That's Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Hit subscribe. And we got new shows coming out every single weekday, Monday through Friday. It's all Leafs. It's all the time. We're having a little technical difficulties to start the show here, Dave.
Literally, we were just about to record, and all of a sudden, you're just like, I can't hear you. I'm like, what? So I think I thought I had figured out the issue from the sound from the last show, which was my mic cable. Apparently, it might be a bigger issue than that. Dave might have to do a little bit of shopping.
Might have to go get yourself a new mic. You know, Dave, you should probably invest in a professional mic system like myself. You should. You should really consider it, pal.
Well, it's a good thing I have this gaming headset, even though I don't game whatsoever.
That's true. This is true. At least we're able to get something done here. So last night, though, Leafs, they also malfunctioned against the Detroit Red Wings.
What a segue.
Yeah, they also malfunctioned there. They had 9 straight wins against Detroit heading into last night's game. They were just, and a lot of those wins, too, were just thumpings. Like, they were just completely obliterating the Red Wings over the course of the last few seasons. But last night, losing 4-1, it was their first loss in regulation in a back-to-back all season long. They had been 5-1 in back-to-backs heading into the game, and now 5-1-1. What went wrong, Dave, in your mind?
Just lazy play, I felt, especially in that first period. They gave the Red Wings a lot of space and time to operate. You look at the goal, right? Riley with a lazy giveaway that forced Dylan Larkin to come to the zone with speed. Jordy Ben trying to, kind of backing off so he doesn't get beat flat-footed. And then Lucas Raymond allowed to walk in, untouched to score that goal. Like, it was just a lot of plays like that where the Leafs just weren't keen on just being in the right place in the right time, being sound defensively. And when you're missing an offensive player like Auston Matthews, your defense has to be that much better because your offense isn't going to be as good. And that's like against Nashville, they got away with not being stellar defensively because Matt Murray was just so good. And look, Ilya Samsonov, like, he deserved the win based on how he played, but the team in front of him just didn't give him much to work with.
Yeah, I mean, the team in against Nashville got Murray that second goal. They couldn't get Samsonov that second goal, and that was the big issue. Like, he was great. He made some big time saves. He's the only reason why the Leafs really had a chance in that game because, they gave up a lot. And to your point, I agree with you where I don't know if I would call it laziness, but they did seem like the Red Wings' MO was to make sure that they played fast and played a little physical, but mainly just move the puck consistently, just keep moving the puck. This was a team that played 5 games in 8 days, the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was their second back-to-back in the week and fourth game in 6 nights. So they've played a lot of hockey. Toronto has. So they looked like they were a tired and slow team because of it. And I think the Wings' game plan was to kind of smother them and get the puck moving, try and get them moving. And if they were staying flat-footed, which they ultimately were, then that gave them a lot more space to operate. So, yeah, I agree with your assessment. I don't know if I would call it laziness, as I would more so just tiredness, tired legs for lots of games in a short amount of time. But what I did note is that not having Auston Matthews out there has been really notable these past couple of games. Like the offense just hasn't really been there. Like you said, they got away with it in Nashville, weren't able to get away with it against the Detroit Red Wings. Just 3 goals through these last couple of games. Not a whole lot of chances. I mean, could have been 4 goals if that Bobby McMann goal at the start of the game would have counted. Do you have thoughts on that, by the way?
Look, spirit of the rule, you can't kick the puck. Now, you can't kick it into the net, nor can you kick it and have it deflect off a defense, like another player. The spirit of the rule was called to a T. But we also know that Bobby McMann was not intentionally trying to kick the puck into the net. He was trying to kick it to his stick. The Red Wings defenseman's foot got in the way, and that's what led to the goal. Like, we see deflection goals all the time. I feel like that's a goal that should be allowed to count.
I agree.
Because, like, that, as the rule, they called the rule as it was. I had no problem with that. But if we're looking at how the play developed and how the goal was scored, that's a goal that should count. And this is not even a Leafs thing. This is you want to see Bobby McMann get his first NHL goal. You don't want to see it being called back on a technicality like that.
Oh, absolutely. And you can only imagine how rattled I was, though, because I had to come back and search Twitter and figure out exactly what was going on with that goal, because I was watching the game with a buddy. So we ended up going out to an establishment to watch the game and have dinner and whatnot. And so I'm watching it on the TV and I'm seeing it and I'm like, okay, he kicked it, but it's not like he, purposely kicked it into the net. It just kind of went off his foot and then went off the defender. Like, well, I don't understand why this is taking so long. And then they called a no goal, and I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell? I had no explanation. I just had to go and search for the explanation as to why that goal counted or was wiped off the board. I'm like, it's dumb. I agree. It's dumb, and I feel bad for Bobby McMann. Had his first NHL goal. His dad is in the building, and for the dad's trip, it got the game started on a good note. A goal in the first period. And then, nope, we're going to take that off the board. And then things kind of went south from there for the Maple Leafs. All right, Dave, why don't we take a quick break? When we get back, we'll get into our good, bad, and ugly from last night's Leafs 4-1 loss to the Detroit Red Wings. And then we'll help tee up the game against the Bruins tomorrow. That's going to be a big game, man. Big game. It's going to be tough to catch Boston. But if they do have any chance in hell, they got to win the games against Boston and quite literally steal those points against that squad, who lost their first game actually at home last night too in regulation. So maybe there's a streak to be started in Boston, but we'll chat about that in a little bit. But first, Dave, how about a word from one of today's show sponsors, your good friends at Built Bar?
Yep. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. We just went through the holiday season. I know many of you are looking to make some New Year's resolutions and try to get that start off on the right foot. So this is why Built Bars might be actually the perfect solution for you. And what makes them so good is they're made with 100% real chocolate. They have many unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, cookies and cream, double chocolate. The list goes on. And not only do they taste great, but they are actually good for you. The macros on these are incredible. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, with a whopping 17 grams of protein per Built Bar. Now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, They've been talking about trying to get Built Bars into stores, and now you can actually do that if you go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff. If you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors like brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. Now, if you live up here in Canada, you can still get your Built Bars delivered right to your door. And to make it easier for you, you can go to the website built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order at built.com. That is LOCKED15 for 15% off your next order at built.com.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. Got my co-host Dave Morassutti with me here. If you are enjoying what you've listened to so far, we ask that you would please hit the subscribe button. If you're watching us on YouTube or if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, we do make content every single day. It's 98% Leafs talk. So if you are a diehard member of Leafs Nation, you got to be part of the Locked On Leafs family, not only on YouTube, but also on our Discord channel, which we'll put the link down below because that thing was popping off last night during the game, as per usual, and it's a lot of fun getting in on the conversation with everybody. So we'll put that link down below. You can get and also chat with us there. All right, Dave, let's dig into this one a little bit. 4-1 loss to Detroit. As we do after every single loss, we do the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start positive. Talk about the good from last night's game. And I think it's got to start with the goaltending. We kind of were touching on it, a second ago, how, Samsonov, despite the loss, despite allowing 3 goals on 22 shots, and having an .864 save percentage, that didn't really tell the story for Samsonov night to me. I mean, if you just looked at the stats, and I know that I get picked on sometimes for being too analytically driven, but last night was a big time. The stats didn't quite match up with the eye test type of game because he made some huge saves for that team. They gave up way too much stuff for him, and he gave the Leafs every chance to get back into this game, but when you only muster up one singular goal, it's tough to win hockey games in the NHL. So, but I thought Ilya Samsonov was great last night. Some really big stops.
Yeah, he was definitely probably the most positive thing to come out of that game. He was coming off of some very, some tough moments, in the last little bit. 2 straight decent starts against Detroit. He seems to come up big against them, but they really let him down. Like, there were some saves, as you mentioned, that, like, first off, there should have been no business making the saves that he made. Some of the saves that he made in this game, and when your team is fluttering offensively, that's the type of goaltending you're going to need to try to stick with it. Like, even like I discounted the 4th goal just because it was, late in the game, power play. It was a weird shot.
He was vividly mad when he allowed that goal too. It's like he knew that his save percentage took a dip with that one.
Yeah, no, you definitely, like, not only that one, but then, also the empty net. So, like, allowing 3 goals in that game, like, I know 3 goals he probably would have said, I would wish I only had allowed 1 or 2, but I mean, yeah, when your offense is not putting up the numbers that it needs to, that's that's tough for any goaltender, even the Matt Murray after what he did the night before.
Yeah, I also want to give an honorable mention to the third line, who I thought had a pretty good game.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously did have the goal that got disallowed and got called back, but overall, like, when you dig into the numbers, 99% expected goals for that third line. 99%. Like, they didn't allow a single thing off. Like, that was a line that had some legs, right? Bobby McMann was in there. He was skating. He was playing hard. He had legs last night. So, when that third line was out there, they were performing, I thought, him, Camp, and Engvall. and a 99% expected goals is pretty wild for a game. So did want to give a quick honorable mention to them, and Bobby McMann got some pretty good. Um, Sheldon Keefe had some good things to say about him post game. Really likes what he's seeing in this short time period that he's playing. But says he plays hard. He's hard on the puck. He uses his body, uses his size to his advantage a lot. He's the first man on the puck a lot of times, using that speed. So he's getting some good praise from the coach, and clearly that's a good sign that he has come into the lineup. Was thrust into a third line role, not even fourth line. They're like, let's see what you can do on the third line, and seems to be, somewhat excelling in that role. Thought he had his first goal, thought he had it, but obviously, the officials thought otherwise, and I guess by the spirit of the rule, the sport thought otherwise as well. But did want to give a quick shout out to the third line and Bobby McMann as well. The bad. What was bad about last night's performance, Dave?
You know what? I didn't really care for the officiating in this game. I thought there was like the Leafs got calls. I'm not like this is not to say the Leafs didn't get any calls their way. They had many opportunities on the power play, but there were some clearly missed things, especially with Michael Bunting, and even like late in the game, like there was that like the play that got me was William Nylander skating behind the zone, gets two-handed from the back by Ben Sherrod.
Mm-hmm.
Then gets up, continues playing, doesn't complain to the refs, then gets thrown down again from behind by Ben Sherrod. Like, what's the deal here? And on top of that, what's Wayne Simmons doing in the lineup if he's not going to Ben Sherrod saying, "Hands off my guy"?
That's a good point. Actually, I didn't put two and two together and think about that, but you're right. That's kind of sometimes he's really in this thing to be that patrol officer out there for the skill guys. And if you're not going to be out there willing to do that, then what really are you for? I felt the same way the night before, actually, in Nashville. There was one play where I think Tanner Jeannot got a pretty big lick onto somebody, and then who was it? Somebody ran Rasmus Sandin the exact same.
Was it Niederreiter? Might have been Niederreiter.
Maybe in the exact same shift. And Dryden Hunt was on the ice. I'm like, that's kind of what you're out there to do, buds. Like, you kind of got to take exception to those types of things. Like, that's why you were brought in a way. Is to have a little bit more meat and potatoes out there. And when you're not really doing much, I guess might be why he was taken out of the lineup last night. That's something also. Timmins coming out of the lineup, bad decision. Like
when you're not having the offense showing up, like he's someone that helps drive a little bit more offense from the blue line. I understand it was a back-to-back. You want to get Jordy Ben a game, but
you know what I think it was, and I mean that's kind of what Sheldon Keefe said. He came out after the game and was talking about how he just wanted to have some fresher legs out there and wanted to get those guys in, and it's easiest to do it on a back-to-back. Mm-hmm. But also, like, I wonder how much influence this dad's trip had into that. Like, all the dads are on the trip. Let's try and get everybody into a game. And it's a lot easier to get them into this game against Detroit than it would be to force them into a game, say, against Boston on Saturday. Like, do you think that had anything to do with the lineup decisions last night?
No, potentially. I mean, it's an easy excuse when it's a back-to-back to say that with the dad's trip, but it's also like, yeah, some guys need a night off. And Jordy Ben hasn't played in a while, so if you ever need Jordy Ben, you don't want to just throw him in absolutely cold. So I'd have no problem with getting Jordy Ben a game. It's just when you're without Auston Matthews, you want to make sure you're doing what you can to improve your team's chances offensively. And that was a game where I felt like Connor Timmins could have made. I'm not saying he would have been the difference maker because obviously you don't expect an offensive defenseman to be a difference maker, but the numbers also show that Connor Timmins' play at both ends has actually been pretty good. So, yeah, I just thought Connor Timmins deserved to stay in the lineup, but alas, it was not the case.
Yes. All right, Dave. What was ugly about last night's 4-1 loss to the Detroit Red Wings. I was about to
Just
call them the Lions for whatever reason. The Red
well,
Wings.
well, they played like the Detroit Lions in the final stages of the season. They really the Red Wings were coming off a game where they had 7 goals against the Jets. So this wasn't the same Detroit team that put up a 4-1 loss to Toronto like a week ago, almost a week ago. But the ugly for me was just the offense looks ugly without
Yeah.
the Auston Matthews, right? Like William Nylander didn't exactly have his best game. I thought the best player forward for me was probably late in the game with John Tavares. He was kind of the one driving things, trying to get chances. I thought that play with Michael Bunting was going to be a goal, but alas, it was on the backhand. Like if Bunting was a right-hand shot, I think that would have been a goal.
Probably.
Like late in the game there, but yeah, it reinforces to me maybe that they need to look at finding ways to add more offense, like more shooters. Like I'm not just saying adding guys that can score goals, but guys that can kind of create their chances a bit more. Guys that don't need others to facilitate their chances.
Yeah, that Patrick Kane is lurking in the weeds, and a game like last night makes people on the Patrick Kane bandwagon get a little louder, I would think. Yeah, for me, it was just like the whole kind of the first period, very, very ugly first period. Which is exactly what happened last time they played Detroit, and they Keefe ripped into them, and they got going in the second and third. Wasn't necessarily the case this time. Like they played better, I guess, in the second and third period, but it still wasn't good enough. And they still gave up too much, and they weren't really battling or fighting hard enough to get into the preferable scoring areas. I think you can give some credit to Detroit. Like I think they had a really good game plan. Just clog up the neutral zone. Don't allow them to get through. Don't allow them to have speed. Actually, I think I saw the stat that the Maple Leafs didn't have a single, which I was like thinking about it now. Yeah, I can't recall seeing one. But I don't think they had a single either rush chance or odd man rush. Probably odd man rush. I don't think they had a single odd man rush last night, which like Toronto typically gets, breakaway or 2-on-1, something. Just because they're so good at, forcing turnovers and getting on the counterattack. But they didn't really have that. Sorry, they had one scoring chance off the rush last night. One scoring chance off the rush.
And that's something like the team didn't exactly play with a lot of speed. Like they didn't make Detroit work to play on the defensive side. In my opinion, I felt like it was a little too easy for Detroit in that game to mitigate that offense.
So when I was watching the game, I had a wager on the team first to 5 shots, and I said, okay, Toronto first to 5 shots. I made that wager, and so I'm really looking at the shot clock as the game's going on, and they were up, I think 3-0 in shots pretty early in the game. And I was like, okay, we're good. Probably will be able to coast here. Just a couple more shots, and then all of a sudden it was like 4-4. And then I'm just like, oh my God, what's going on here? Because the Leafs they weren't even able to break it into the Detroit zone. Like legitimately, they would get to the opponent's blue line, get to the Wings' blue line, and the puck gets swiped off their stick. And they just couldn't even break into the zone and establish some sort of offensive possession. It was brutal through that first 10 or so minutes of that first period. It was all Wings, and after that disallowed goal, almost like it took the wind out of sails for the Maple Leafs. So yeah, that was ugly. That's a performance that certainly the Maple Leafs cannot replicate in Boston, and hopefully Auston Matthews can return for that game. So why don't we take one more break? When we get back, we can kind of talk about the Auston Matthews elephant in the room in a way, and tee up the game against the big bad Bruins. But first, betonline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football, we got the playoffs starting up, Also to basketball, hockey, we got baseball starting up pretty soon. We've got it all at betonline.net. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, it's where the game starts. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano. Got Dave Morassutti with me. So Dave, massive game tomorrow. Toronto continues their road trip. They go from Detroit into Boston. It's an off day today, so there's not much going on. They'll be able to spend the entire day with their dads and with the family in Boston. So that'll be neat. Hopefully that gives them the rest they need after last night. They visibly looked tired. So an off day potentially to rest those legs back up and get ready for a big game tomorrow against the league's best Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I mean, these are the games that can show what the Leafs are in terms of contenders, right? We're talking about how the Atlantic Division is going to be a pretty much death row for for the three teams, like with the Bruins, Leafs, and Lightning, all kind of, it feels like kind of stapled to their positions right now. But what really irked me about the loss of the Red Wings was that the Bruins lost, right? Like you're coming into a game where you're going to be playing the Bruins next. You could have potentially have been within 7 points if the Leafs had won the game against Detroit, and then you win. If you beat Boston, you're now within 5 points. Like that's how big. That's how these swings can be. It's just not only when the Leafs have been winning so many times, but it's when you win, because you got to catch the other teams when they've kind of slipped up a little bit. Like Tampa Bay is still within reach of the Leafs. They're 6 points back, but they also have 3 games in hand on Toronto. Right? They're just buying their time, and they're taking advantage of when the other team loses. That gives them a window. So Sheldon Keefe, I know, said that with given how many points that they're behind, it's 9 points right now. It sounds like an insurmountable expectation to say the Leafs can catch them, but anything can happen. Like the Leafs have played so consistently, and Boston has finally lost their first home regulation game. Like you can't say for sure that it's over. Right. I didn't like that Sheldon Keefe said that. He's like, you know what, and he did also say that we got to stay on them. We got to make it tough for them.
Yeah. Well, he was talking. Yeah, he did. Just for those who didn't hear the comments, he was asked last night just how big of a game this is going to be, and he had said that, or how big of the playoff race it is against the Bruins, and he said, "Oh, it's not really a race right now. Like they're on pace to be the the highest win percentage team in hockey history." So, that's kind of where he was at. Yeah. But then to your point, he did kind of walk it back a little bit and say, but we got to make it tough on them. Like we got to put a little bit of heat on them. And we do that by taking points on them, off them the nights we play them. So that's, I guess, his version of walking it back. But
3 more games against Boston, right? Like, there's some points to be had there. I understand also it's not just the points you get against Boston, it's also the points that you could potentially gain if Boston loses. Like any chance the Bruins lose, there's a chance for the Leafs just to get that a little bit closer.
Yeah, but I mean, not to say that this game might. I don't know. Like you come into this game right now, right? It's 9-point swing, or it's a 4-point swing almost. If you lose, you go down 11. If you win, you go to 7. It's almost as if this game is near must win if the Leafs do want to actually, make a chance to win this Atlantic Division.
Yeah, like it really is, because Boston isn't losing a lot, as we just saw. The Kraken, that game shows that the Bruins aren't perfect. Also, it's funny because the Bruins had 3 days off coming into this game, and Seattle's been playing a lot, so that was the curious one.
On the road, they're undefeated on this road.
Oh, they're steamrolling teams.
Those are 7th win in a row.
they're steamrolling teams. They steamrolled the Leafs, and they kept that going ever since. Like they're
The
just one of
Leafs, the Montreal, they what was it, like 8-4 against Ottawa the other day? Yeah, it's
like
great.
if and you look at the Bruins' schedule coming up after they play the Leafs, they have a bit of a gimme game against the Flyers. Although the Flyers have looked a little bit better since they lost to the Leafs. They have the two New York teams, San Jose, Montreal. Then they have a row of they play the Lightning, they have the Panthers, the Hurricanes, the Leafs again, the Capitals. Like there's some tough games coming up for
Dude,
Boston.
but we said that last time, like just ahead of Christmas, that there was a tough schedule. I'm like, oh, the Leafs, they might be able
I
to
know.
make up some ground here, and they went and they steamrolled all those teams too. So like we keep saying that,
I
but
know.
let's just face it, they're a good freaking team. This is a great squad, and the Leafs are going to be in tough. And I mean, in
Yeah,
my opinion, they need Auston Matthews. They
they
need
do.
Auston Matthews to stand a chance in this game. He's got to come back. Yesterday, woke up, had the sniffles apparently on top of whatever ailment he's had that's been bugging him the last little bit. So that was the reason why he was out from for last night's game. But I think what has been proven over the last couple of games here, it's only 3 goals in 2 games. It's 1.5 goals per 60 per game that they've averaged here with him out of the lineup. They need him. They need him to return. They need that offense. And I mean, let's hope that he's good to go. Right? Like this is the game where I think this was the reason why they rested him. These two was so that he was fresh and prepared and ready to go for Saturday in a near must win if you want to stay in this division and make it a race against the Boston Bruins. I think it's fair to say that they need him ready to go tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, and I know he had an illness that also just complicated things to play against the Red Wings. So I know Sheldon Keefe didn't want to commit anything. So
I preferred my verbiage of woke up with the sniffles.
the sniffles. The sniffles. I don't know. I mean, we don't know what that illness was because it could have been a little worse than the sniffles. But yeah, I just hope that.
You talking diarrhea, Dave? Are you making a poop joke?
No, I was making up like the other whole joking. I just Auston Matthews. They need him back. You need him at full strength against this Bruins team. Not just offensively, but you got to have that guy down the middle because the Bruins have really good center depth, right? So that's what you don't want to give the Bruins the easy matchup to say, all right, we're just going to throw the Bergeron line against Tavares. Like make the Bruins have to decide, kind of pick their poison a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. No Jake DeBrusk, so he won't be a factor tomorrow. But outside of that, they're a pretty healthy club right now, and they're at optimal efficiency essentially. Outside of that DeBrusk injury, obviously Matthews will be game time decision. No TJ Brody for the Maple Leafs since he's still on injured reserve with that rib injury. He will be reevaluated and potentially could come off later next week. But when you just look at this team, like I'm looking at the rankings here of Boston, and God, they're top 10 in everything. Like everything. They have the best penalty kill unit in the NHL. They have the best defense in the NHL. They have the third best power play in the NHL. They score the second most games per 60 in the NHL. Like it's just maddening how good, well-rounded, and deep this team is. So Toronto's going to be in one tomorrow. They're definitely going to be in a dogfight to try and try and get this win. I would assume they would probably go back to Matt Murray after, just because they seem to be alternating here. So I would think Matt Murray will get the start. Interestingly though, like much it didn't, I guess, matter much in Detroit because they won 9 straight. But Toronto's won 4 straight here against the they won 4 straight against the Bruins. And if I'm not mistaken, Keefe was hired November 19th or something of 2019?
Yeah. You saying Keefe lost?
He's never lost to the Boston Bruins.
I think you're right on that one. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So Keefe has never lost to the Boston Bruins yet. So maybe hopefully they can keep that going tomorrow when they take on Boston. Although he never lost to Detroit either until last night. So maybe he's getting all his L's out of the way this week against all those squads, trying to ruin all those, perfect streaks that he has against these teams. But either way, should be a good game. I'm excited for it. It was a really good, tight 2-1 victory last time they played. It was kind of the game that got their season back on track in a way. Remember they had played Philly on November 2nd on the Wednesday, and then they had played Detroit on the Saturday, played well, got the win, and then went to Carolina and got the win there as well. So, a couple of really solid wins that weekend. Hopefully they can get another one against Detroit this weekend. All right, Dave, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank everyone for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to Locked On Leafs podcasts on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Leave a like and a comment down below if you would. Curious if you think that the race is over or if they still got a shot. Do the Leafs still have a chance to compete for this division, or the Boston Bruins just too good and have they run away with it already? Let us know in the comment section below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. All right, Dave, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your weekend to everybody else as well. Enjoy the game. We'll be back another episode on Monday to break things down. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.